All right, all praise, glory, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And peace to the name of his son, Jesus. I count it today blessing each and every single time that I can come before you, preach the word of God, and never do count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to get right into today's lesson, and the lesson is entitled The Sacrifice of Jesus Foretold by the Prophets. Okay, and that's something, again, when people come to the Bible, it's clear that they don't understand the Bible. And, it's your prerogative to mock and scoff, but I will at least understand what you're doing. Peace to you, brother Isaiah, brother Micah, the brother. Peace to both of y'all. It's good to see you. So I'm going to start off in the gospel according to Matthew chapter 16, and I'm going to pick it up at verse 21. Matthew 16 and verse 21, because when the Messiah was here, he told us, or he told his disciples specifically, rather, that he had to die. So this is Matthew the 6th, peace to you, Brother Lawson. Matthew 16 and verse 21. Matthew 16 and verse 21. It reads as follows. From that time, actually, I'm going to pick up at verse 20. It says, then charged he his disciples that they should tell no man that he was Christ. Okay. Because Peter had made that confession. He said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Right. And then he went on. Went on to charge them again, don't tell anybody. In verse 21, it said, from that time forth began Jesus to show unto his disciples how that he must go unto Jerusalem and suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and be raised again the third day. Peace to TMC Israel. So he knew that he had to die, like he even told his brethren in John, where they came to him, they said, why don't you go up to Jerusalem? He wouldn't go for the Jews sought to kill him. He couldn't go amongst his own brethren. I mean, I'm talking about his own nation. And then his own brothers had something to say to him. And then that's when he told them, my time is not yet, but your time is already ready. He knew exactly when he had to die. But what did Peter say when he told him he had to be killed? Verse 22, then Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, be afar from thee, Lord, this shall not be unto thee. Okay, and now after him telling him that he was blessed, because when he made that proclamation, when he declared that he was the Son of the living God, he said, blessed art thou, Simon Barjona, for flesh and blood have not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And then in the next breath, he's saying, get thee behind me, Satan, thou art an offense unto me, for thou savest not the things that be of God, but those that be of men. So even his own disciples didn't understand that he had to die. And he rebuked him in this moment, because understand, if he doesn't die for the sins of the world is lost. But now let's pick it up in Luke the 24th chapter, because even when he died and was resurrected, they still didn't understand. He appeared unto his disciples after his resurrection, and they didn't know, he wasn't revealed immediately unto them. They didn't know they talking to him. And he asked them in Luke 24 and 17. Actually, let's pick it up in Luke 24 and verse 13. It said, and behold, two of them went that same day to a village called Emmaus, which was from Jerusalem about 80 furlongs. And they talked together of all things which had happened. And it came to pass that while they communed together in reason, Jesus drew near and went with them, but their eyes were holding that they should not know him. And he said unto them, what manner of communications are these that ye have one to another as ye walk and are sad? And then one of them, whose name was Cleophas, answering, said unto him, art thou only a stranger in Jerusalem, and hast not known the things which are come to pass there in these days? And he said unto them, what things? And they said unto him, concerning Jesus of Nazareth, which was a prophet, mighty indeed in word before God and all the people. And how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death, and have crucified him. But we trusted that it had been he which should have redeemed Israel. And beside all this, today is the third day since these things were done. Yea, and certain women also of our company made us astonished, which were early at the sepulchre. And when they found not his body, they came saying that they had also seen a vision of angels, which said that he was alive. And certain of them which were with us went to the sepulchre and found it even so as the woman had said, but him they saw not. Then he said unto them, O fools and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Are not Christ to have suffered these things? Meaning, in other words, don't you know he had to die? He told his disciples that he had to die. We just read, and then what was Peter's response? No, he didn't want to believe it. And then it says, so here it says, and beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded unto them all in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. He was constantly telling them. He said in Matthew 26 chapter, he says, you know that after 2 days of the Feast of the Tabernacle, Feast of Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. Right? So now let's go back. Let's go back. Matter of fact, we can go back to let's go back to Genesis. We're in Genesis, the 3rd chapter, and we can pick it up at verse 15. Because he said he went to the writings of Moses and the prophets. Let's look at some of this. And it says, and I will put in Genesis 3 and 15, it says, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. What is that talking about? That's talking about the ultimate demise of Satan, but also the crucifixion of the Messiah. That's what that's talking about. That's what that's talking about. But now let's keep going. Let's keep reading. Let's go to Genesis, the 22nd chapter. So when he said he lifted up the heel against me, that's what that's talking about. That's telling you all the way right there in Genesis 3. But let's pick it up in Genesis, the 22nd chapter, because here we see the foreshadowing of the sacrifice of the Son. It says in Genesis, the 22nd chapter, in verse 1, it says, and it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham and said unto him, well, he tested him, Abraham, and he said, behold, here I am. And he said, take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And that mountain, again, Mount Moriah. But what did he tell him? Take thine only son. What did we read in John, the 3rd chapter? What do we read there? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, but whosoever believe in him should not perish but have everlasting life. So now they go up, and now let's keep reading. Now he leaves his servants, and then him and his son go up to worship. And it says in verse 6, and Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. So now he took the wood and laid it on his son. His son wasn't a baby. Okay? He bore that wood just like Jesus bore the cross. And then he said something to him. He said, Isaac spake unto Abraham his father and said, our father. And he said, here am I, my son. And he said, behold the fire and the wood, but where's the lamb? Where's the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, my son, God will provide a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And we know that was a ram in the thicket, but he's the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. He's the one when John the Baptist saw him, he said, behold the Lamb of God which taketh away the sin of the world. See, you need a sacrifice for the remission of sins. So what happened here? Again, in verse 9, and they came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order, bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And understand that he was obedient even unto death, just like Jesus was obedient. This foreshadows the Messiah. That's why when people scoff, I say, okay, you ever want to know? I can sit down and tell you about this one. But people it's amazing, it's unfortunate, the mindset of people. Let's pick it up let's go to Exodus. And we're going to pick it up in Exodus, the 12th chapter. Because again, even when I talk about that lamb, let's look at the Passover lamb. Remember, it's not, he died, I quoted in Matthew 26, verses 1 and 2, specifically 2, that he said that he would die on the Passover. That's not by coincidence. He's the Passover lamb. Just like they had to come up under the blood of the lamb that passed over, from the wrath of God, we must come up under the blood of Jesus to escape this. This is all pointing to him. Exodus 12 and verse 1, it says, the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months, it shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. Let's skip down a little bit. I'm going to pick it up at verse 5. It says, your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. And that lamb that they had to take, we should understand, they took it on the 10th day and kept it to the 14th day because that was a trial period, because it had to be a perfect lamb. Okay? Again, your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. So it couldn't be anything wrong with it. So in that trial period, it would be found out if something was wrong, a blemish, some defect would manifest itself. Jesus had his own trial period. What was that? He had a trial period during his ministry. Pharisees, scribes, the Sadducees, all these religious leaders coming unto him, constantly testing him, trying to see if he was righteous. Constantly. That's ultimately what the interaction with these religious leaders consisted of. But as Pilate said at his crucifixion, when he put forth his own inquisition, I find no fault in him, because he is a perfect lamb. He did no sin. Right? Then it says something else. I just want to point to something else. This is we still in Exodus 12, and I'll pick it up in verse 46. It's talking about the Passover. It says, in one house shall it be eaten, thou shalt not carry forth out of the flesh abroad out of the house. Now shall you break a bone thereof. Not breaking a bone thereof, because none of Jesus's bones were broken when he was on the cross. See, it's all pointing to him, brothers and sisters. It's all pointing to him. Let's go to Isaiah 53rd chapter. Actually, let's go to Psalms. Speaking of the cross, let's go to Psalms the 22nd chapter. We'll come back to Isaiah. Psalms 22, and let's pick it up at verse 1. What does it say here? It says, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me and from the words of my roaring? This is what we understand that David wrote, but he was a prophet. And he was speaking or writing of the Mashiach, the Messiah. What else it said here? It says in verse 14, I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. That's from him being on the cross. My heart is like wax, and it's melted in the midst of my bowels. He's describing the anguish of the cross. He said, my strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue cleaveth to my jaws. Thou hast brought me into the dust of death. Then he says something. He says, for dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. Then he says, they pierced my hands and my feet. That didn't happen to David. That happened to our Mashiach, our Messiah. He said, I may tell, or that means count, all my bones, they look and stare upon me. Then he says in verse 18, they part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture. Again, it's all talking about him. Let's go to the book of Isaiah. Now let's go with Isaiah 53rd chapter. Isaiah 53rd chapter, because here in Isaiah 53, we see again the Messiah and the sacrifice that he had to make. This is Isaiah 53 and verse 3. Concerning our Mashiach, it said, he is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Okay? That's mankind not showing him proper honor. He even says in the Gospels, he came unto his own, and his own received him not. Book of John. And then it says, surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. Okay? So he bore the sins of the world upon himself. He carried our sins. He said, but he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities, the chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. Healed how? Spiritually. Because we had no way out except to be for the grace that he has granted. So it says, all we like sheep have gone astray. There's none righteous, no, not one. That's what Paul says. Well, he said, we have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. You can read that account where he was silent before his accusers. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as his sheep before his shearers is dumb, so he openeth not his mouth. Then it said he was taken from prison for judgment, and who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people was he stricken. Then it says something. See, this is how you know we're not talking. The Bible is real. We're not just. This is not just a fairy tale. It says, and he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. How did he make his grave with the wicked? He died. He was an innocent man, had done no sin, and died between two malefactors, between two thieves. But then it says, and he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. With the rich in his death, because he was put in the rich man Joseph of Arimathea's tomb. Because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. So we know what we're talking about. We're talking about Christ. Now let's go to Isaiah. We're still in Isaiah. Let's go to Isaiah the 61st chapter. Isaiah 61. And let's see something here. Because even here, we find out about this one that is to come. This is Isaiah 61 and verse 1. It says, the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound. We are bound to death and sin. He came to free us of that. This is the annunciation of his coming, and through his coming, mankind was brought grace. And then it says to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn. So let's see specifically, let's break that down. Let's go to Luke, the 4th chapter. Let's break it down in the sense of what time when he came was it announced. Luke 4 and verse 16. It says, and he came to Nazareth where he had been brought up. This is referring to Jesus. And as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for a reading. And there was delivered, so just a side note, he kept the Sabbath. Next, verse 17, and there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written. We just read Isaiah 61. He's going to quote this, but not all of it. Verse 18, then he says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, and to preach deliverance to the captives, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. Now, when it came to the vengeance part, he closed it. Why? Because all that stuff he was talking about then, he brought that, and he had to die to give it to you. But then he closed the book, and he gave it again to the minister and sat down and asked them that were in the synagogue were fasting on him. But all this was foretold, because he said, and he began to say unto them, this day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears. So we have a Messiah that he's not just a Messiah just because somebody said he was. We understand who he is based on what the prophets have said. As Peter said, we have a more sure word of prophecy. So we understand who he is based on what was said of him. See, I can't read the foreshadowing of Christ in Genesis 22 concerning Abraham and Isaac and then just say Christ didn't exist. I can't read these contemporaries that are all writing about Christ, historians that are writing about Christ, certain aspects about that have written, I'm talking of antiquity, and then it line up with the prophecies and me say it's not real. I'll leave that tomfoolery and that blasphemy, that mocking and scorning to someone else, because I know it's real. And with that, brothers and sisters, I want to say peace to everybody that's listening. Brother Isaiah, Brother Makai, my good brothers, Brother Lawson, MC Israel, Sister Rose, Sister Mary. I want to say peace to each and every one of you. Hope you're edified through the word. I do want to remind everybody that we have Bible study every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on Zoom. And the personal meeting ID number is 845-7108-8849. And we have Bible study every Friday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's a question and answer. All praise to the Most High, good brother. And the personal meeting ID number is 602-961-1318. And if you've been edified through the ministry and would like to leave your donation, you can do so on our website, www.israelteach.org. 100% of the proceeds go to the work of the ministry. And we appreciate those who have contributed to the ministry. And finally, there are books that are written that are available. All praise to the Most High. KS. Peace to you. Books that are available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and other places where books are sold. Into Egypt Began with Ships, The Pagan Origins of Christian Holidays, Feel Like War, Feel Like Burn Brass, Killing Black Innocents, For Then Shall Be Great Tribulation, In Defense of Biblical Polygyny, and The Feast Days, A Shadow of Things to Come. All those are available, and another's coming soon. So with that, brothers and sisters, it's always my prayer that you will edify.